We are going to work on our Project 2 environment. First, we're going to set up our ground plane. Delete the cube and hold down Shift-A, choose Mesh and Plane. Instead of sizing it randomly, we're going to do something different. So hit N and open up a sidebar. Then go over to the Scene Properties tab and under Units, choose whether or not you feel more comfortable with metric system or the imperial system with feet and inches. Click on Units and do that. And then after we do this, you can actually just type in how big you want the X and Y of your plane to be. I'll choose 100 feet. But look at the scale. The scale's gone all goofy. So what we're going to do is hit Control-A in Object Mode and click on Rotation and Scale, and that will fix our scale. We will use loop cuts now in Edit Mode and give this plane more vertices to work with. So hit Control-R and roll the middle mouse button until you have a good grid. Don't put 1,000,000 cuts, but don't put 3 or 4 either. You got to find the Goldilocks number. Now go from the other direction and make a bunch of more cuts so the shapes look like squares and it looks like a gigantic checkerboard. Now we have a lot more geometry to work with. Hit 1 on the number pad to switch to front view. And then if you try to hit Shift-A to add a reference image, it's not going to work. You have to go to Object Mode first. You can do that by hitting Tab. Then hit Shift-A, go to Images and Reference Image. Find your reference images that you're using. Now, size this up a little bit. Before we work on this, we're going to change some things on the Object Data tab. So click on that and make the following changes. We're going to do this every time we have a reference image. Set the depth to front, leave the side at both, leave orthographic checked, uncheck perspective, and check only axis aligned. Finally, click opacity and turn it down until you feel as though you can see both the plane and the image. Now you're going to scale, rotate, move the front image to match the plane size. So find your reference image for the front view and make it match the plane. Line up the bottom of the ground, the lowest part of the ground, with the flat plane and make sure it's as wide as your plane. Don't change the side of your plane, change the image. Now hit number pad 3 and now we have a side view. Hit Shift-A, get your reference image, go through all the changes on the side, and now you're going to move the image over the ground plane and scale it, the image, to fit the side view. My image was about twice as long as it was wide, so that's what this represents. We're going to use proportional editing and the ZBrush to model the plane's shape and match it to the reference image. We're going to walk you through that in a minute. First, we have to do our top view. So hit 7 and then import your reference image and set it all up on the right side like we did for the front and the side so it's semi-transparent. Remember that the front is aiming down, so when you bring in your reference image and you're positioning it, you want your top view front to be aiming down. So I have to rotate this image to do that. I have to rotate it in the right direction, move it over, rotate it a little bit, and then increase the size until it fits. Perfect. Now it's all set. We are ready to start editing. A new tool is the brush select tool. So you hit C and then you paint with it. You can paint your selection. You have to hit enter, but now if you see if we move the geometry around, it doesn't look good. Even if I paint this whole map in, it looks good from the top view, but when I try to use G and scale it up, it just looks like a block. So we're going to use proportional editing. So I'm going to select a little bit on the top I'm going to hit this button to turn it on. It'll turn blue when you turn it on. Go to my side view. This time when I use G and Z to move it up, it looks the same until I roll my mouse wheel and I change the size of that circle. That will affect the range of this tool. Now it'll move as much or as little of the mesh as you want, which is perfect for sculpting hills. So I'm going to keep changing the circle size and clicking on different parts and shaping it. Now you want to switch between 1 and 3 and 7 views on your numpad and then do editing from each view. So you're not only fixing it from the front, you're fixing it from the side, and you're fixing it from the top. That way you're truly sculpting it in 3 dimensions. I keep changing, rolling my middle mouse wheel to fit. I'm going to drag these sides down. It's like I'm pulling a blanket over a bed. I don't want any open gaps like this. There we go. Now, my basic shape is done, but there's a lot more to do. I'm going to go in and start fine-tuning my shapes. I'm not going to worry about those trees yet or the cabin or anything, just the ground. And now I'm really going to give it some polish. I'm going into 3D view a lot more too. And I'm working with smaller and smaller circles. I'm flattening out some areas where I want my house to go, small details. Now I want to make more changes, and I have a lot of strangely shaped faces here. Some look really stretched out and uneven, and some look small. So I'm going to go in and make loop cuts wherever the faces look all stretched out. I want to try to make all my faces have a consistent size. I don't want some small and some stretched out. So that's not perfect, but this looks a lot better than it did, and I have a lot more detail I can work with now. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit and keep working on this area. I want to flatten this part out where I want a house to go, and there's a little path going down the side of the hill. So I'm going to peck away at this, bring it down. I'll pull out some ground to make a little ledge. If you make any mistakes, hit Control Z. And this is the fun part. You have to take time, you have to have patience, and you have to focus on what you're trying to do, and you can really have fun with sculpting the details now. I'm starting to make a little road coming down, or a path, and then in that little divot is where I'm going to put the cabin. So I keep moving it around and looking at it from different directions. Now, if you want your terrain to look smoother, switch to Object Mode, go up to the Object menu, and go down to Shade Smooth. Now I stretched out some faces, so I added a few more loop cuts to make it look even. Now it looks a little too smooth, so I'm going to add some lumps and some tiny little divots and make it look a little bit more natural and irregular. There we go. So I'm going to say this is good for now. After a few last-minute adjustments, I'm ready for the next part. And as always, be sure you're saving often. In case Blender crashes, you don't lose all of your work.